Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our virtual roundtable today on the Phuket Sandbox, talking about what exactly that means for AustCham members. This will be a very open forum. We encourage questions and participation, but we will be starting with two speakers to open up. The first will be our Australia's Consul General to Phuket, Matthew Barclay, and followed by the President of the Phuket Hotels Association, Anthony Lark. So they'll both provide insights at the beginning, and then around halfway through the meeting, we're going to go to your questions and thoughts on the topic. It's obviously a big topic for Phuket, but I believe it affects all of us here in Thailand, all businesses. So by the participation, the amount of people who've joined, it's obviously quite important to us. We'll begin by welcoming Australia's Consul General to Phuket, Matt Barclay. Matt, hello from Perth, I believe.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks very much, Brendan. I'm in Perth right now on day 11 of quarantine. So I definitely am very interested in this talk of quarantine-free travel back to Phuket. That's absolutely certain. So thanks for the opportunity today. And it's great to see so many people joining us to talk about what's a very important issue for Phuket and also for Australia as well. Now, I think it's really important today, before we go much further, just talk about where we're up to in terms of approval for this idea. Now, there's been a lot of reporting about the Phuket Sandbox. I've spoken to a lot of people here in Phuket, the authorities here in Phuket, the travel industry here in Phuket. The plan has definitely progressed along. It was approved in principle back in March. There's been a lot of meat put on the bones since then. We're now at a point where it went back to the CCSA on Monday. It was again approved in principle, and there's some further work that needs to be done around the edges of the plan before it is finally signed off and then goes through to the Royal Gazette. So my caveat would be that all of this remains possible, that there could be changes and that we may see things alter. So don't go and book a holiday based on Matt Barclay, the Consul General, telling you what's going on. I would hazard you to just remain abreast of what's happening in developments before we move ahead. So what is the Phuket Sandbox? So some time ago, the Phuket tourism industry was talking about trying to expedite vaccinations to the island so that they could open up as a type of bubble to vaccinated travellers from around the world. The plan was originally for October. That's moved ahead to the 1st of July. So the government has brought vaccines from other parts of Thailand to prioritise vaccinations of Phuket's adult population, with the plan being to get over that 70% mark, which is generally recognised around the world as being the amount that you need for herd immunity. Now, the last figures I saw was that 69% of Phuket's adult population has gotten at least one dose of the vaccination, and authorities have told us that they're very confident that 70% of the population will be fully vaccinated by the time 1 July rolls around. So when 1 July rolls around, the plan is for international guests from certain approved countries, we're still not yet sure which approved countries they are, will be able to travel to Phuket and stay quarantine-free on the island. Now, the Thai government has introduced a SHA Plus certification. So hotels need to sign up to be recognised by the Thai government as providers that meet certain criteria. But once people are here on the island, they'll be able to stay 14 nights on the island in these hotels, but they'll be able to travel widely during that time. So they'll be able to travel anywhere in Phuket province, including islands off the coast that are still within Phuket province. That doesn't include Koh Phi Phi, Koh Yao Noi, places like that. But it does include some of the smaller islands where you can do snorkeling and things like that. There will be time to do, so people will still be required to do PCR tests while they're here on the island, just to absolutely confirm that they are not carrying the virus. And then the plan is that after 14 days, people will then be able to travel further in Thailand. So be able to have another final PCR test, prove that they're all good to go, and then travel further into the rest of Thailand. And there's no restriction on where they can travel then. Now, if you're a expat looking to, and you own a house on the island, everything we've heard so far says you can't travel in stay at your house. You will need to book a hotel. And there's already some people out there looking for loopholes saying, well, if I book a hotel, does that mean I have to sleep there, or can I sleep at my house as long as I have the booking? Look, these details are still being worked out. But it is, I think, incredible news. And I think it's, it's an incredibly pioneering step. I think the fact is Thailand is still dealing with the third wave of the COVID pandemic. There will still be measures in place that are there to protect the population. So things like mask wearing will still be essential. There will be a requirement to download a Thailand Go tracking app as well, so that the authorities can ensure that you're not going off the island, and that you're following the measures that you need to follow. And then there's also potentially going forward restrictions that are put in place to protect the rest of the population. So I think there's been a lot of commentary already about the fact that alcohol sales are still restricted. Now we'll have to wait and see from 1 July onwards what those rules will be, but there is a possibility that those restrictions could continue. And I think this is a balancing act. And I know that there's people out there that particularly work in the food and beverage industry. They want to see customers back, and I absolutely understand that. But I think the government's trying to get the balance right. Now, that's a very quick overview. I think there's lots of nitty-gritty when it comes to what you need to do here, how you register. The good thing is that the TAT the Thai Tourism Authority is putting together information that they're disseminating out to members of industry groups. We will make sure that, and Brendan has assured me that at the end of this, they'll pass that on to members as well. And that's really our best guide at the moment as to what the parameters are around this Phuket Sandbox. Now, the interesting thing with the Phuket Sandbox is it's not just about Phuket. So the plan is that in August, Phang Nga and Krabi will then join Phuket as being open to vaccinated international travellers. And there's a progressive plan that works its way up to eventually seeing Chiang Mai and Bangkok reopening as well. Now, the prospective date for those reopenings was 1 October. This is all dependent on them meeting the same criteria that Phuket met, which is that 70% of the adult population needs to be vaccinated. Now, we all hope that we get to that point, but there potentially could be delays that see that target not met. The important thing is that Phuket is on track for that 1 July reopening. Now, very quickly, what does that mean for Australia? Now, if you're an Australian in Thailand, this is a good thing. You can still, as far as we know at the moment, still get into Phuket. Now, there has been talk about, you won't be able to travel domestically into Phuket unless you're fully vaccinated. As far as we know at this point in time, the restrictions will remain that it will be open to people that have PCR tests or rapid antigen tests within 7 days of travel, or people that are fully vaccinated with both doses of Sinovac or 1 dose of AstraZeneca. Now, of course, again, this could change, but the authorities are assuring us they're not looking to block the island off from the rest of the country. They want to still ensure that commerce and people can still continue to do what they need to do. For Australians in Australia, well, look, this isn't going to have a significant impact on the reopening of borders. We're not going to see the borders reopen between Australia and Thailand by 1 July. We are still talking about what Australia's border posture will be in the future. But as you would have seen in announcements from the Australian government, it is more than likely that we will see travel restricted until Q3, around the middle of next year, Q3. We hope that will change, and we will obviously be watching how Phuket progresses and how they handle the Phuket Sandbox, and that will be a key data point for us. And I think this is what needs to be taken away from this. This is great for the Phuket economy, but for the world economy, Phuket is one of the first places in the world that is looking to reopen with a population that has hit herd immunity. Very few places have done that. Very few places have hit herd immunity right now. So this will be a critical data point for us. And then looking at how potential infections and potential outbreaks are then handled. I think so. Watching this will be incredibly valuable to the world. So I think Phuket and Thailand really need to take a bow in being so progressive and working to reopen their economy. Now, I know a lot of people here, and I'll be very quick because I think my couple of minutes is up, but In terms of Australian business in Thailand, now clearly there's Australians in the food and beverage industry here in Phuket, but in terms of people that are outside of Phuket wondering what this means to them, well, 20% of the Thai GDP is derived from tourism. Around 10 million visitors of the 40 million visitors a year that visited Thailand pre-pandemic came to Phuket, and those visitors tended to spend around twice as much as those who would visit Bangkok and Chiang Mai and places like that. So the Phuket tourism industry is a massive driver for economic growth and for receipts for the government. Now, it doesn't just impact the hospitality and tourism industry. There are upstream impacts from having tourists coming back in. And we can see that in transport, in food services, in tech being, and companies that have been dormant because they haven't had the investment or haven't had the activity in the last 18 months. We expect to see some of them coming back to life as we start to see tourists re-entering the island. Now, I will throw to someone who's much more proficient at talking about these things and talking about market attitudes and inclinations at this point. But this is a great thing because we expect to see it as a confidence building measure, that even if we don't see a massive slew of people coming through in the first couple of months, we expect that it will build confidence among the international travel market, which will not only impact Phuket and Thailand, but also the rest of the world's economy. So that's it for me very quickly. Thank you again.
The first question from Bruno Huber. G'day, Bruno. How are you?
Thanks, Matthew. It was fantastic. A very good overview. Yes, question of flights. And there's some direct flights we know that have applied to get into Phuket. We also know exactly they cannot do anything before there's an official announcement in the Gazette. But what about transfers? Transfers via Bangkok? Is that bridge, is that possibility being discussed on the open?
So I have seen some information saying that people arriving in Bangkok and then transferring down to Phuket may be possible, and that there would be a certain part of the terminal made available for those transfers. And I think some of the TAT information that had previously been circulated did talk about that, but I would have to recheck. And again, to caveat it, I think we'd have to recheck and see if that's something that's in the final plan that comes out. But I think they're very keen to ensure that they're all directed very safely down to Phuket. So I definitely have seen that information in the past, and we'll dig that up for you and pass it to Brendan and pass it on once I see it.
Okay, thank you.
And on that flights question too, that's something I didn't touch on. So we've seen several airlines commit to the fact that they will recommence services into Phuket. And we've seen a number of the Middle Eastern carriers, Emirates in particular, Singapore Airlines increasing their services. The other interesting impact here as well is Thai. They're looking at flying into Paris, London, Copenhagen, and Frankfurt as a result of this. They're also looking at it, as I mentioned, increasing their Australian services as well. That's flying into Bangkok, but positive signs from Thai Airways about continuing those international links.
Yeah, Zurich is also on the list, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. What's the general feeling? How likely is it that Thai will resume the service to Phuket within July? Is that chance 20%, 50%, 80%?
Well, look, I think there's a lot of optimism. I think, we're talking to Thai at the moment. We've seen them promoting schedules, for the next month where they're talking about, and I know that they're actively applying for permission to fly these routes. So, they seem fairly committed at this point. The question will be how many people come on these flights. And I think we need to be prepared for some soft demand at the beginning. But then I think that if the path is proven, I think we'll then start to see that pick up. And let's remember, we're in the low season in Phuket right now. We expect that the next couple of months won't be an indicator of what we'll see around December and January if the scheme gets off the ground. That's usually around Phuket's busiest period. So we expect to build up over the next few months.
Okay, thanks. Maybe a last one. How far is Bali and Phuket in this process?
I know that Bali is definitely talking about the same thing, and I know that the tourism minister in Indonesia did have similar conversation. He has been talking with international partners as well about going down in a similar scheme. Now, I think the competition to be the first one out the gates here is quite intense, and I think ultimately, that's great, but it needs to be done in a safe way. And I think this is something that the authorities are obviously contending with in Phuket right now. They want to reopen, but their paramount concern is making sure it's done in a safe way. The other thing as well is making sure that it is done in an internationally compliant way. So the growing issue that we have right now is verification of vaccination certificates. Thailand will be one of the world leaders here because they will be one of the first to open up. So the standard that Thailand applies, we haven't seen exactly what it is yet, but we know that there's concern out there about fraudulent vaccination certificates. So they want to ensure that they've got a robust system in place that the rest of the world can look at and can follow.
Wow, we've got a lot of questions here. So Sue Altman, Sue, how are you?
Yeah, I just put that up that I believe there is quite a number of people coming across the Saracen Bridge that are not getting checked. They're coming from Suratani, Phang Nga, whatever. And I particularly know of an instance of my staff who came back a couple of days ago in a vehicle where the driver and the passenger in the front seat were checked. There were several other people in the vehicle, nobody else was checked, and they came from an area where we know COVID is, and some of them have had vaccines and some of them haven't. And this is happening all the time, apparently. Yeah. It's very lax up there, and this is going to cause us a lot of problems, because we're going to end up with staff coming back who want to work in the hotels and the restaurants, and coming back onto the island and perhaps not having their vaccines.
Look, I can understand those concerns. And look, ultimately the system is only as good as all the parts that make it up. And this is critical. And I think the authorities are aware of this, and look, ultimately it will be a matter for the Thai government to ensure the robustness of the system, but I think they understand the risks as well. I think the potential for the plan for there to be problems, I think they're actively trying to problem solve and troubleshoot that now. But I think your concerns are very, very valid. I mean, because ultimately we get one shot at reopening and we want to make sure it goes right. So look, I mean, that's incredibly valid feedback, which I'm sure that there's people in Phuket that are aware of it right now as well.
Yeah, Matt, I think you were being very politically correct there, my friend. And
I believe diplomatic might be the term.
Yeah, okay. But I don't agree with you, because I think that this is happening on a daily basis and on a very large basis. And I really think that the authorities aren't doing anything about it. And they're probably aware of it, but if they don't do something about it, we're going to end up not with number 3, but number 4 is going to hit us. And I'm very concerned, like everybody else, is this sandbox. We're all desperate. We thought things were going well earlier in the year. We thought, yep, we're on top of it. We've got the domestic market starting. We were starting to almost smile a little bit. And then it's been a major crash. And now we're all sitting here again going, well, will this work? Won't it work? And
look, I've got to say, and this is not just saying it to satisfy my, the Thai host, but look, Thailand, Phuket was one of the hardest hit provinces when the when the pandemic first hit. We've been incredibly pleased with how they responded and the measures they've put in place. And I think we've got to look at the numbers that are coming through now, that despite the fact that we're seeing the worst wave of the pandemic hitting the rest of the country right now, and over 2,000 cases a day, we're seeing 1 case, 2 case coming through in Phuket right now. And I think that's a sign that the measures are in place. Look, and you're right, like there are concerns there that you've raised, but they'll never be perfect, but they are doing a very good job right now at keeping the population safe. And I think that will be under even more scrutiny as we go forward. But I think it's a really valid concern that you raise. Absolutely.
That actually leads into the next question, which comes from Zara Tremlett. Zara, are you there?
Yeah, I actually live just across the bridge in Phang Nga, and my work and our boat and everything is in Phuket.
Right.
We actually have to get special paperwork from the Puyai, proof that we live where we do, etc. and we go back and forth. Sometimes it might take 2 hours to get across the bridge, sometimes 10 minutes. And I think Sue's quite right. I think at different times you have different interpretations in how to handle that scenario. I'm guessing, though, that Phuket is basing this whole plan on the herd immunity philosophy, right? Therefore, even if I come to Phuket and I have COVID, you're all vaccinated. Therefore, you know what I'm saying? Because we can't get vaccines here yet. We're a long way off.
Yeah, I'm waiting.
You're waiting, Sue. Shame.
I need AZ, and they haven't come up with it for us yet. Even though we've got a work permit, they're still saying coming.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I do know a lot of our friends have had their first vaccinations, Farang friends. So I hope all of you do get vaccinated very soon. But I know nobody has the globe in front of them and can predict, but any information that can be shared down the line on how future crossing over by road to Phang Nga, it will be most welcome. There's a whole group of us out here that
absolutely. And I think you're right. And I think it's something that we will be across. And I can guarantee you that while I'm in Australia and I'll be on leave for the next month, I will have someone in the chair in Phuket who will be watching what the requirements are and publicising that. And I know that we'll be working very closely with the provincial authorities as well to make sure that, look, I don't think you're a case in isolation. I know a number of Australians have to cross the bridge every day to get to workplaces or homes and things like that. And I think you're right, making sure those measures are in place and robust and that you can pass easily as well. I think that we need to communicate that information as well. So yeah, again, I think a very valid point. And I think as the plan gets further down the road, we'll be able to provide some more information. I know that the Thai authorities will be able to provide some more information about how those processes will work.
Well, Anthony, can we hand over to you?
Okay, hi. Do you have any specific questions? I mean, obviously there's a lot going on in Phuket at the moment with just 20 days to go until we see the reopening of Phuket under the Sandbox scheme. There has been, as one would expect, a lot of speculation and rumor and false misleading information through various parts of the media and through individuals who really don't understand what we're trying to achieve here. But essentially, Phuket is opening to vaccinated travelers from the 1st of July, and there are a number of rules and regulations that one must adhere to about arriving and the process about getting tested prior to arrival. Once you do arrive, you've got to stay in a classified SHA plus hotel. You can't travel out of Phuket to another province or Bangkok unless you've been here 14 days. So you're free to come in for 2 nights or 3 nights or 4 nights or whatever it is without any additional days. But if you want to travel to another province, you have to spend 14 days in Phuket first, which requires a number of PCR tests. But we're very hopeful, and this is all about baby steps. Our hotel members on Phuket are slowly reopening. There's a great deal of hotels that are seeing bookings already coming in based on the Tourism Authority of Thailand's recent articles about the Sandbox scheme. And the Middle East and the UK, France, Germany, parts of Scandinavia seem to be the best markets for us at the moment because those countries don't require you to quarantine upon returning home after a visit to Thailand. So Singapore and Australia and other places that do require you to quarantine are off the list. Why would one come here and then go home and spend 2 weeks in quarantine? So we're very hopeful, and we have almost 100% of the employees in the hotels of Phuket are already vaccinated. That's one of the stipulations within the law. I believe we're now over 65% of the general population of Phuket Island has been vaccinated. That's going to increase beyond 70%, which was the government stipulation for this. So we're very confident. There's a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of people saying, oh, it's not going to work, or, you know, what's going to happen when people go to Patong and they see that bars aren't open and this and that. This is baby steps. This is meant to get some tourists and some cash into the system in Phuket after 18 months of, you know, a long dark tunnel, devastating for tens of thousands of kids who are being reinstated in jobs. Restaurants are reopening. People are getting employment again. There's a general sense in the community of positivity. I've lived here for 33 years and I've never seen such a great community spirit exist between the organizations. Government, hospitals, airports are being renovated. I mean, it's all good. Come and join us in the sandbox. Brendan?
Well, that's a question for me, Anthony. So as I haven't received any vaccinations yet.
Right.
And am I able to travel to Phuket on July 1st as well, or would I need to quarantine for 14 days?
You will need to quarantine for 14 days.
Right. So it's only, I would need to have my 2 vaccinations to...
Phuket, yeah, 2 vaccinations are obviously required. Again, there's rules. If you look at the TAT news the website of the Tourism Authority of Thailand, there are daily updates. This is a fluid, moving goalpost target. Yeah. You know, as the rules and regulations change, the only people that seem to be completely up to date with this is the TAT, and also the Phuket Tourist Association, the PTA, who have done an incredible job for this island. They were the ones that spearheaded this entire lobby group to the Prime Minister's office and to the Ministry of Health, and navigated that entire minefield to get Phuket open again. So we're enormously grateful to them. So they've got all the updated info.
Okay, great. What about if I go back to Australia, I get vaccinated, so I'm coming back from Australia into, I choose to come to Phuket first for a bit of a holiday. Does it matter if I'm on a tourist visa or non-immigrant B visa? Do visas matter, or is it all about the vaccinations and the test?
Visas do matter if you're from a country that requires a tourist visa to come into Thailand. If you don't, like Australians don't require a visa. So the answer is no, you would not require a special visa, but you would be required to have a certificate of entry. I can't remember the name right now, but there's something that you've got to get from the Australian. Matt can probably help me out. There's a certification required.
An exemption to get out of Australia, and then it's the COE, the certificate of exemption, certificate of entry to get into Thailand. So they're the main requirements. So the TAT is saying that a valid visa is the requirement at the moment.
So are you saying that Australians require a visa? I thought that Australia.
That's the information on the TAT website. So again, you know, whether or not it's exactly as you said, if you are from a country where you require a visa, then you require a visa.
So the visas will basically be the same. It's just the vaccinations and tests that are the new policies. Can I also ask about children under 18? They don't need to be vaccinated, right? They just need the PCR test on arrival.
And I think children under 6 don't require either.
Okay, great. So that was from Genevieve. Thanks for that. Phil Harper. Phil's based down at Pattaya. He's got a yacht business, and they've got quite a few yachts for rent around the island. He's asking the situation for surrounding islands. How far beyond land base does Phuket area extend?
Yeah, Phuket Island is the main land of Phuket, etc. Yeah, being the 400 or so square kilometers of what you could see as Phuket Island. But then there is Naka Yai, there is Koh Hai. There's a number of other small islands around Phuket Island which make up the province of Phuket. Beyond the province of Phuket, you've got Phi Phi, which belongs to Krabi. You've got other islands in Ratcha, etc. And of course, Phang Nga Bay belongs to the province of Phang Nga. So you're not allowed to leave Phuket at this stage, and it will be relaxed to go to Phang Nga Bay and see James Bond Island under this initial scheme. But I couldn't tell him the deputy governor of the TAT told me just 2 days ago that they will relax those when they see that the sandbox initiation is working and people are following the rules. So, you know, we're starting with some strong rules and regulations, and as long as it, you know, it doesn't, doesn't hit the fan, we'll see these being relaxed as time goes on, and more than likely, the 14-day stay on Phuket before you can go to Bangkok will turn into 7 days, etc. But I that's in my crystal ball.
A couple more questions around vaccination. So Phil again is just asking, really, is it only vaccinated people? He thought anyone with a PCR or rapid antigen test could get in.
Well, this is the current guidelines are, and this is re-released from the 1st of June, that it is a requirement to either be fully vaccinated with both doses of Sinovac, 1 dose of Astra, or to have a rapid antigen test or a PCR test. So, and again, this is the moving target that we're talking about here. Whether or not that remains the standard from 1 July, we'll have to watch this space. But, you know, we'll make sure from the embassy point of view that we're advising Australians beforehand what that standard is, if we're advised ahead of time.
And Simon Weatherall, as a property owner in Phuket, but he's based up in Pattaya, does he need to quarantine, say in a hotel, I guess, Simon, or could he quarantine at home as he hasn't had a vaccine?
I believe that if you are a villa owner on the island of Phuket and your villa is not part of the SHA Plus registered scheme, then you have to check into an SHA hotel.
Okay. Bruno Huber again, he's asking about the facilities, restaurants, sites, excursions. Do you expect any to be operating by August?
I think that's probably a good one for Anthony, but I think, you know, look, absolutely. I think there's restaurants that are looking, you know, they're seeing 1 July as a recovery date, you know, to come back. And, you know, as we talked about before, you know, demand may not necessarily be there immediately straight out the gates, but this is a pioneering step and we will see demand recover. But I think, you know, there are plenty of restaurants that are open on the island already. And if the regulations do allow for the sale of alcohol and things like that, I think you'll see the bars and things like that recover. I think there's a lot of people, and some that are joining us today, that are waiting for those restrictions to drop away so they can reopen their businesses. But I think, you know, it'll be progressive, particularly as we see from the demand. But I think, you know, look, Anthony's probably very well qualified to answer this.
Well, exactly. And right now, you can't serve alcohol legally in any restaurant or any hotel restaurant on the island of Phuket. But of course, common sense would tell you that that would be crazy to extend beyond July the 1st. And that rule rests with the Phuket governor, not the Ministry of Health and not the TAT and not Bangkok. It's a local administrative regulation. The Phuket governor will make that decision. And as we know yesterday, again, there were 0 new cases of COVID in Phuket. We can expect the Phuket governor to relax these regulations. I would imagine that we'll be hearing some very good news in the next 5 or 10 days.
Okay, great. What about, are there any options to go down for a 1-day business trip? Am I able to do a rapid test going for 1 day, not stay there and fly straight back to Bangkok?
Look, and I think this is the area. I think, you know, we're hearing different things, and I think this is where there's some confusion yet. We'll have to wait and see before 1st of July. I think, you know, there's been talk about quarantine, but there's been talk as well about being able to come in after doing PCR tests and things like that. So as I said before, the standard as it exists right now is a PCR or a rapid test or varying degrees of vaccination, but there's been talk of quarantine as well. So I think, you know, until it's written in stone, where I think it's hard to say, to give, you know, and I apologize, some of these answers seem very wishy-washy, but I think this is a situation we're in right now. The government is putting the final finishing touches on this. So please excuse the fact that we can't answer definitively, but we are watching it very closely, and we hope to be able to give you the answers, but you know, it is moving around a bit at the moment, as you can tell by the fact that, you know, I think we've given a couple of different answers on that particular question. So I know that you're all very interested in that, but you know, we can't say for certain at this stage, because I think, you know, that they haven't really worked out exactly what the parameters are yet on that one.
Very good. So just before closing comments from Sue again, and just looking for that clarity, which is good. Thanks, Sue. Just to clarify, if you live and work in Bangkok, say me, you go to Phuket, have the test, but you're not vaccinated, do you have to quarantine or just stay at a SHA plus hotel, which is a big difference?
I think, as Matt just explained, my advice in seeking that answer, which is not relevant until July the 1st. So between now and July the 1st, we've got a couple of weeks where if you do what I suggested, and that is stay on the TAT website, which is updated daily by the Tourism Authority as the representative body for the government on this whole sandbox thing, keep your eye on that, and the answers will be evident. It would be speculation for me to say categorically that you can arrive from Bangkok under this or that condition now after July the 1st. It would be irresponsible. So keep your eye on the news.
Okay, great. And there is just one more question here that it's for Matt. I think you could see it there as well. We were chatting.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's a great question, Andrew House, but I think it's a very long answer. We'd all love to see it. So just for everyone, the question is, are there any KPIs in the program that for DFAT to accept the Phuket/Thailand travel bubble with Australia, similar to what our Prime Minister was discussing in Singapore yesterday? Matt?
Look, and I'll be very frank, look, at the moment, Phuket is not on the cusp of having a travel bubble with Australia. We need to look at the travel bubbles that we have established. New Zealand, probably one of the most similar countries to Australia when it comes to political systems, economic systems, and infrastructure. It took almost a year to get that bubble in place. Since it's been in place, and this is with almost next to zero cases between both countries, we've had to shut that bubble 3 times to different places. So there is talk with other places, or talk about other places where they're assessing that. I think Phuket and Thailand, we are watching it. We would love to see it, but I think that there's no set criteria. There's no KPIs that need to be met. That being said, I want to see Australians being able to travel to Thailand when it is safe to do so. And my job here as an advisor to the government will be advising them on the progress and on the operation of this bubble. And going back to what Sue said earlier, absolutely. If there are problems with the standards that are in place, if there are problems linked to the measures that are in place, we'll be reporting that as well. We won't be withholding anything from them. We want the good, the bad, and the ugly to go back so that the people that are making decisions have the information that they need to have to be armed with. But look, more than, as much as everyone here, I want to see the 400,000 Australians a year that were coming to Phuket when we're on the other side of this, and I'll be fighting to get them back there. The last 2 weeks the last 11 days that I've spent in quarantine, I've been talking to airlines, to travel wholesalers, to everyone that's involved in this industry to get them excited about this plan and to get them watching it too. Because a lot of people, they weren't aware that we were on the cusp of something really exciting here. So I'm trying to build interest back here as well in Australia, so that when Phuket does burst out the gates and we see those great results that we're hoping to see, that we've got an audience back in Australia that's watching. So no, it's a top priority for me to be advising government on that stuff, because I want to see everybody here that has a company and everybody here that has business in Phuket succeed because Australians are back.
Absolutely. And of course, all of us Aussies and all AustCham members up in Bangkok and all over Thailand are very keen to get back down to Phuket as well for our weekend and week getaways, etc. So we're all very excited and hope it's going to work. Matt and Anthony, do you have any closing final comments before we finish?
Yeah, I think I'd just like to sum up what Matt alluded to just then, and that this is a program that's designed to gradually see tourism, the lifeblood of Phuket Island and Chiang Mai and Koh Samui and Pattaya and every destination here reopen carefully, responsibly, and Phuket is the experiment in that sense. And so I think that we have to be very patient and understand that no one has ever done this before. Bringing this island back to life after 18 months of virtual mothballing is going to be a challenge for the public health system. It's going to be a challenge for the hotels. You imagine how much maintenance hotels are going through, and training in restaurants and staff uniforms, all the millions of things that come into bear here. My advice is be positive, keep your eye on the TAT news, and every time there's a problem, I guess it's endemic and responsible. We're responsible to find solutions, and we have a great team of people running this. And I know it's very easy to be to be speculative and to be skeptical of the outcome when you're sitting in your living room on the sofa somewhere and you're commenting on YouTube or Facebook or one of those television shows that we all see. Very easy to poke at this, but let's just wait until July 1st, and fingers crossed. Get back.
And I concur with everything that Anthony says there. And look, again, while it's not usually something the government likes to do, is talking about things that aren't yet set in stone, and with the uncertainty that's out there. But I think as a community, it's important that you're informed as to what we know. And I think the important thing here is I don't think there's nothing that we know that we're not letting you know yet. I think that it's an evolving situation, and this is pioneering territory, exactly as Anthony said there. We are breaking new ground. This is exciting, and it will take time to get it exactly right, but we're trying to make sure that you've got a good sense of where we're heading. Look, a week ago there was talk about only 7 days being in quarantine, being in a hotel in Phuket. It moved to 14 days in the last week. So we're watching this move around. We don't know where it will end by 1 July, but I assure you that particularly the embassy, particularly the consulate, we will be trying to get out information to everyone here through Brendan and through the embassy once we have the details. So particularly that really important question about getting into Phuket, trust me, we will be that is the top of our priority in terms of making sure that you guys can move and you know exactly what the requirements are. So as I said, everything today is still caveated with watch this space. We will confirm it for you, but I'm excited, and I think this is a real exciting time for Phuket. So thank you again, Brendan and Anthony.
I'd just like to add one thing on that, Brendan, if you would allow me. I just want to reiterate the only sense of confusion that's out there at the moment that actually matters is that it's been reported that you have to spend 14 days in Phuket if you want to come to Phuket. You do not. You can come here for a 2-day holiday, a 3-day holiday, a 10-day holiday, a 7-day holiday. During that time, if you want to go to Bangkok, they want you to spend 14 days here. That's it. But you can come for a week. You can come for 5 days. It's been misreported all over the place, including from the TAT website, or misinterpreted that you need to spend 14 days in Phuket, full stop, and that's just not true.
Thank you, Anthony, and thanks, Matt. I think a couple of skills that we've all developed over the last 18 months is navigating communications from various sources and trying to work out what's what, and of course, dealing with moving targets. So it's about being patient and just communicating and making sure we're sharing ideas like the two of you have done here. Thanks to everyone that asked questions. It was fantastic. I'm sure there's a lot of questions still unanswered, and they will come to light over coming weeks. If you do have any questions for Matt or Anthony, you can send them to me and I can pass them on if it's okay with you.